Hey, it's Kevin DeWitt here, and welcome to another plugin knowledge session. In this session, we're going to have a look at the PSP InfiniStrip plugin. So firstly, if you are new to my channel or new to my videos and you like what you see, please click the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell to be notified of all my future videos. So the PSP InfiniStrip, it's pretty new at the time I'm recording this. I just got my hands on the demo myself and I've been playing around with it and really like it. I sort of saw it online, some quick previews of it at NAMM, and I was really interested in checking it out because I like the concept of it. Now, it's not an entirely new sort of concept. Obviously there is things like DSP have had a similar sort of approach in the AAX world, with Pro Tools, and then Stephen Slate with the Slate Digital. The VMX product, again, is very similar, but PSP obviously have taken that sort of concept or that play on it and used it in their own way, in their own unique way, which I do like. So in this video, we're actually going to do a bit of an overview of the interface itself and run through some of the major key features of it and things like that, because it's such a sort of, I guess, big plugin, covers a lot of areas. We're going to break it up into a few videos. So I'm going to have a look at the modules themselves in future videos. So in this one here, we'll run through the entire sort of plugin overview, a bit of a brief overview of it, and just run through the major features of it and show you around. All right, so here we are in Cubase, and here is the plugin. Okay, so PSP InfiniStrip. I've got it loaded in the stereo version on a track here. There is a mono version as well that you can load on, I guess, on your instrument tracks or whatever else. I've got it on an entire song at the moment, just to sort of run through, the examples of it, etc., just to give you an idea of it. Now, I'm pretty new to this. I have been excited to actually get my hands on it and play with it since I heard the announcement about it. And yeah, so we're going to go through and see what we think about it. Now, obviously, if you have a look at the panel here, it resembles like a 500 series sort of rack style hardware unit. Virtually looks nice. The graphics are great, so that's definitely a good thing. Okay, so some of the stuff that they claim from the manual is it's got 22 independent processors divided into 8 types of modules. So you got preamps, filters, compressors, equalizers, limiters, dynamic modulators, control, and special modules. And yeah, you can mix and match all of those to create your own channel strips, etc. It's got 7 slots. So at the moment we can obviously see 4. So I'm assuming that we could add more slots. So if we move this over, and we'll just add. Okay, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got 6. Okay. Doesn't want to let me add a 7th. Not sure. Okay, maybe it's limited in how many you can have. Okay, so let me just check what that says. So 7 dedicated slots for you to add, 1 module from each type of processing modules. Okay, so you can't have 2 of the same. So that makes sense. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8 categories, and we can add 7 modules. So we can add obviously 1 of each of these except for 1, right? So 1 can miss out, but we can get 7. They do have a preset here that says, let's start from scratch. So this is what they consider to be scratch, which is, looks like a gain module and a master control module. So one of the big selling points with this plugin is that you can switch through the different types of everything and it retains the settings. So you can get a comparison between them. So if we say add a compressor here, I would assume that whatever settings we put on here, we can now change that to a different type. And it will retain the settings. Okay, so that's interesting. So I guess the thing here is that is pros and cons here, right? So the pro, and this is what I do like about it, and I wish that some other plugins did this, is that you can switch between obviously all of these and have the same settings and get a true comparison of the different types and what they might sound like, what the differences are between them. From a purist perspective, though, with the hardware, it doesn't really line up because the hardware of these different types don't all have the same controls. Some of them are hard-coded. Some of them, don't have this control at all. For instance, one of these compressors may not have an attack and release. All they have is an input control. So I guess they're taking a bit of a play on it there, right? Because as much as it is great that you can switch between them to get a comparison, they're not obviously going to be a true reflection of the hardware emulation because a lot of this hardware doesn't have the same settings, which is why I guess you've never been able to do a comparison before. So there could be a pro or a con there, right? So it's a pro that you can flick between and retain the same settings and compare the different types. It's a con because it's not a true reflection of the hardware because the hardware, you couldn't do that. There's no way because they don't have the same settings. So it depends which camp you want to be in. Do you want to be a purist or do you want the modern take on, I guess, these type of compressors and being able to compare? Right, there's 3 different view modes, full, resizable, and mini view mode. I guess we'll have a look at that when we get there. And it supports, it supports external sidechain. As I said, it's got a mono and a stereo version. It claims to have 0 latency processing. I'm not going to test that out, but you can if you feel like it. And it's got lots of presets. Won't even appear on the screen. There's so many of them. Okay, there is tons of presets, but I will tell you right now, one thing that is really bugging me as soon as I open this is that my scroll wheel on the mouse will not scroll. Now, unfortunately, you can't see the bottom of this because of the way I record the videos. I keep the window a little bit smaller than my actual monitor. My monitor's a bit bigger, but this continues down to the bottom and then has a little arrow, and the only way to scroll is to actually go down and, as far as I can tell, click on the little arrow or hold it to scroll, but it doesn't even want to do that. So I would definitely like to see that fixed. I would like scroll capability would be really good because that is really annoying. Okay, and that's interesting because as I switch through the presets, it actually retains the changes I'm making even though they're not saved. So that is really interesting, but it also means that you can't default back, but I'll have to see if there's an undo. Oh, we can do a compare. Okay. Compare the changed version to the original. So I guess, in some other plugins, when you switch presets, it'll automatically wipe out your changes if you haven't saved it. This one will remember it. It's actually remembering the changes I've made to default and obviously to this one here. But I'm going to go back to that for now. All right, so I'm going to go to the default. Okay, so basically when you pull up the plugin for the first time, this is what you're going to get as a default, right? So you're going to get 4 modules. You get a preamp, pre-80s preamp. You get a basic filters. You get a FET presser, which is obviously a compressor, and you get a channel Q. Now, I think we'll go through all of these in more detail, maybe in other videos, etc. We'll just do a bit of an overview at the moment because obviously, it could be a very long video to go through all of these. But I would say that if you've used PSP plugins before, these are probably all based on their existing plugins, just in this one format. And the great thing is, from my understanding, is that you get all of these. You get all of these included in the price. So, it's probably, if we assume that they are identical to a lot of their other plugins, and maybe they're going to add more in the future, hopefully they will, that it's probably pretty worthwhile money-wise because you're getting a few plugins in this one purchase here. Okay, so over here on the side here, we have this little cog thing. So if we go on here, this is our like a settings control, and you can see the 3 views we have. So at the moment we have a resizable view mode. So when they say resizable, they don't mean that you can actually resize. There's some plugins here where you grab the corner, you can stretch it, you can expand it. That's not the way it is. What they mean is resizable means that if you add more plugins, then it will resize to suit that. Okay, and if you take them away, it will shrink back down. Alternatively, you could go to full view mode. And if you go to full view mode, it will stay full view with all of your available slots left just the whole time. So it depends how you prefer to obviously view this. If you prefer to see all of the panels here, so you can see we've got a gate available, we've got a limiter available, control, and an insert X and an insert Y that are available there to be used, right? They're free. We haven't used them up yet because we have used our EQ, we have used our compressor, we've used our filter, and we've used our pregain. Now, if we remove them, which I'm assuming you can do. Okay, looks like if you drag it down and it turns red, if I let go, it disappears. So I could, in theory, remove all of these. And then you can see all of the slots there. So preamp, filters, gate, compressor, EQ, limiter, etc. But let's go back. And then the other view is the mini view mode. And when we go into that, we end up with this little panel on the side here. And what we get is just the one panel view as we click on it. So I'm guessing if you have a limited view or you want to say tuck it over the side here while you're looking at your music and you want to do some processing, but you just don't want this giant window here, this is a fantastic view. So I think it's great what they've done here to give you the options of how you prefer to see your view, whether it shrinks down or whether it gets bigger like this. Now, I would assume that if we go to resizable, I would assume there is a minimum size. Okay, and it seems to be 2, right? So the minimum size that the plugin view can be is 2 panels, which is pretty much the same as that mini view, because that is basically laid out in 2 views. All right, so liking that so far. Definitely liking the view there. Let's go back to our default again. Okay, so when we're working with this interface here, you can see, I sort of flicked through it before, but you can see there's the little arrows on each of these modules. So this is one way to be able to flick through the different types within that category, right? So you can't just flick through any module, but if we are touching the compressor module, we can flick through the compressors, which you can see there is 3 types of. From the filters, we can flick through the various filters. Again, seems to be 3 types. The preamps, we can flick through. There's a few there. Now, and we can do that on each of them. So the EQ, we can flick through all of the EQs. So if you just want to quickly flick through one at a time, you can do that. But as you could see, I also clicked on the name. And if you click on the name, it gives you the entire drop-down list plus a remove button. So instead of how I showed you could drag it, you can also go remove, right? Or we can switch to any one of our modules quickly by just clicking on the name and flicking through. So either way is going to work. Okay, so adding additional modules here, we can do it in, again, two ways, depending on your view, right? Now, in this view mode, we can click on the plus button here. It gives us our choices, and we can then just select one, and it will add it. Now, the other way to do it is only if you are in full view mode. Well, actually, before we do that, let's have a look at mini mode. So if we are in mini mode, we can do the same thing. We can click plus and we can add our module there. If we are in full view mode, we can actually click on the name of the various panels and add in a type, all right? So for our gate, for our limiter, for control. Now with let me just get rid of that one. So with these two insert ones, when we click on it, we get a choice of all of the controls here. Now, it does say in the manual that you can add the same one that you've had in another one in here. So I just want to see, can I add another EQ? Yes, I can. Can I add another gain? I can. Okay. Interesting. All right. So in theory, we can add two compressors and we can add two EQs. Well, actually, I've got three EQs here. I've got three EQs there. What if we try the same thing with compressors? What do we got? We got, hang on, we've already got that. Yep. So we can add three compressors, and we probably could add three gain modules, I would imagine. I don't know where you would, but you could. Yep. All right. So that explains that. So if you want to add additional ones, right? So you have these, as I explained before, you have these predefined ones, right? These are locked in. They can't be anything but what they are, right? This has to be a preamp. This has to be a filter. This has to be a gate. This has to be a compressor. This has to be an EQ. This has to be a limiter. And this has to be control, which is only one control anyway, so you may as well load it. These two, insert X and insert Y, though, can be any of them, including the master control. So this gives you the option to load one of the specials, right? Because the specials don't have a slot. So the de-esser or the de-hummer don't have a spot predefined. So you could load those into these two here if you want to get one of each type. I did count 8 before though, so what are we missing? All right, so slight correction on what I said earlier on. For some reason, when I was flicking through the manual and going through this, I saw the words 7 modules, and then I calculated that there's actually 8 sections here. But I am mistaken. As you will see by this panel, there is actually 9 modules. So the wording, if I had read it correctly, stated that there is 7 predefined modules, which is these preamp to control that are locked in to that type, plus 2 flexible modules that can cater for, any of the additional modules. And that way you can obviously add in the 2 specials, as I stated, or you can add in additional EQs, compressors, dynamics, filters, whatever you need. So if you want to double compress, you can do that. You want to double EQ, you can do that. So that's great. All right. So that was my mistake. And this is now even more better. Okay. So removing modules, pretty simple. As I've shown, we can drag it down till it's red, disappears, right, we can go on here and get to the little thing that says remove, and it will take it away. The other thing is that we can move everything around, right? So even though we have predefined slots here, that doesn't mean that you are locked in where you place them. You're only locked in what you can put in them. So you still have the flexibility to move them around, so we can adjust our position anywhere we like. So we can, put the preamp at the end if you wish. You can just move things around. Right, so for instance here, normally I guess you would have a preamp. You then might go through a filter. The layout I guess they've put here is pretty sensible. But your control might want to be right at the end here if you're going to use these two inserts. And you might decide that you want to compress before you EQ. Or what you might want to do is, let's say I want to have 2 EQs. Okay, and I'm going to have one that's going to do some corrective work, right? So it's going to do some cuts. So I might say, I'm going to put that before the compressor. All right, so I'm going to do some cuts, remove some bad frequencies. Then I'm going to have my compressor. It's going to compress only the good stuff. But then the compressor might take away a bit of our top end. So we want to add a little bit more in here. So I want to add in a second compressor, which I added in one of the insert controls. And I put that, just there on the end. And then we might go, okay, well, here we want a limiter. We want to get our level a bit louder. So I'm going to have a limiter here. And then we're going to have our master control. Okay, that's possible. What you might also want to do is say, well, I want to actually double compress. So I'm going to do a FET compressor on one, and then I'm going to go for an opto for a bit gentler. So we can just click on that, and you might want to say, well, I'm going to put the two compressors together. So we're going to go EQ, compress, compress, EQ, limiter, master control. Great. And you might have a gate in here because you just want to clean the signal up a little bit. So, we have a bit of a gate here, which looks like it's based on an SSL by my viewing. So this might be the perfect layout for you, or you might want to decide to, I want the gate right at the end here, or I want it right at the start, right? You can mix and match however you so choose. So as I said, I think what I'll do is I will go through the various modules individually. And when I say individually, not each one, but I think I'll go through each type by itself. Okay, but we'll quickly go through the generic one here, which is the master control. So this is so I want to give you some sort of audio example in this video, because otherwise it's all just talking. And, as much as that's great and you want to see this plugin, I'm sure you want to see it in action. I mean, if I bypass the entire project, I have a song. It sounds like this. Now if I bring the plugin in, so if we sort of explain what we're seeing here, we can see there's an in LED here, there's an out LED. So on every single one of these modules, I think every module, from what I see anyway, we have all of these controls, right? These are generic across the board. So let's just run through those. So we have a mute control, right? So if we were to, I'll do a gain down, just so I don't blow anybody's ears. So if we had a gain control set, right, we could mute it. We could solo it. So for instance, if we had two modules here, so let's make it very dark. Okay, so we could either mute that module or we could solo this one, which in theory still mutes this one, but it mutes all of the additional modules as opposed to itself. Now you can have more than one soloed as well, so it works, very much the same as what you'd have in your DAW, right? But you could also mute more than one track. So I've even got confused with the DAW by calling them tracks. Modules is what I meant to say. Now, presets, we have this giant list of presets up here, which is actually presets for the entire plugin. Okay, so it's going to load up all the various modules and everything else. But within each module, we also have various presets just for the module. Each one of these has presets to suit certain things. Now, depending on the module, there may be some more features. Let's just flick through. Oh, we already had filter. And expander. Right, so in expander, we've got a couple of extra here. We've got the sidechain external, and we've got this mon button. So if we turn on the sidechain, we'd have to activate sidechain in our DAW as well, and then it could be listening to an external source like a kick or something like that to trigger the compression or gates or whatever it is we're actually doing there. So I'm assuming that, okay, so with them all visible here, we can now see all of the controls on the bottom here. So we've got a few different ones here, but most of them obviously have got, well, they've all got the mute and solo, which we've talked about there. We've got the sidechain external, so we can set sidechain external on. You can set it on as many as you want. Well, out of these limiters, compressors, and gates, and they will respond to whatever the sidechain is that you have set up, your external sidechain. Okay, so you'll also notice this monitor button here on the bottom. So this is actually monitoring, in this regard, on the limiter, compressor, and gates, this would be monitoring the actual sidechain signal. So if I found a kick drum here, right, so what I've done is I've set up the kick drum as a sidechain here, boosted the volume to so it's really easily heard, and set the threshold, etc. Right, but I've got the kick drum solo just so it can be heard as well. Okay, in a normal song, you wouldn't be using solo, you'd just be having it open, not muted. The volume's up, but I've set the bus to no bus so that it plays out nowhere, but the compressor can still hear it. So you can see the compression happening. If we click on monitor, you can hear the kick drum, right? This is what the sidechain is hearing and reacting to. So you can hear some obvious pumping there. Turn the sidechain off with then just normal compression. Okay, anyway, that's just the point of the bottom here. So that's what the sidechain external and the monitor is. Okay, now there's also monitor control over on the hummer and the de-esser. Now I would assume that these monitor controls here are going to let you hear what it's actually changing. So in the case of the DS, I would imagine it's going to highlight the S's. We'd have to set it to something, to what it's responding to. So this is what it is thinking that it's trying to DS with a crazy setting like that. Right, or in the de-hummer's case here, this is what it thinks it's de-humming. All right. Hopefully you can hear that. But that's what those two monitor buttons are. So that's all that is there. Okay, so I can't find a description of the in-out in the manual, but if I play the music here, I think it's giving you an indication of the signal, how hot it is coming in and out. So you'll see here, it's very green here on this side of the limiter, because obviously the limiter's pulling it down. So I would imagine that if you are doing, say, gain staging, you might look at that and go, okay, well, that's a bit hot coming into the plugin. So first off, let's get that out of the way. I'm going to turn that down. All right, so we're nice and green here. Look, I'm not 100% sure of the optimum level because, as I said, I can't find a description in the manual, but I would think red's not great. So if we're sitting in green going into yellow, maybe that's fine. That's optimum. And then you get the same example out. So it's really good for gain staging because, like, if I push this, let's just turn that down there. So if I push this really hard, you can see it's red on the out. And then that throws all of these other modules into the red. Now that may be what you want. You may want to push it hard into one and not the other. Right? But then you may want to bring it back down or whatever. But that might not be the case. You might want to go, okay, well, I don't want to do that. I want this to sit nicely. Now, what I don't see really with some of these is I don't see like an output control. It's like you have to actually change your settings to keep them that way. So if you really wanted to drive this preamp to get some crunch or something like that, well, it's going to blow out the rest. So there's not really much you can do there, but more than likely in this case, I guess you would use a drive instead. And then you could bring the gain back down. But I guess it shows you how the signal's going and flowing here, and whether you need to adjust some settings or something to get it. I mean, it's going to be great for things like makeup gain here, where if you're doing compression, you could drop your makeup gain to make sure it stays in the green, so you don't hit into the red there. Or if you want to, it's getting too green and you want to get it slightly up to the yellow, you can get an idea of what makeup gain to push into that. All right, so we obviously have this preset function up here, right? I'm not really going to go into it. Obviously, there's presets. You can manage them. You can do saves, loads, load banks, whatever you want to do, reset to factory. You've also got an AB. You got an AB function here. You've also got an overall power button here, so you can turn the plugin on and off. Obviously, you can also still do it from your main control there. But what I wanted to do is quickly go through this master control here. Now, just before I do that, okay, so I've pulled up a mono version of the plugin as well. So visually, it looks pretty much the same. I don't see much in the way of difference when it comes to the filters or anything like that. Obviously, they're working in mono this time. There is, I think, one main difference will be in the master control. So if we go here, so you can see, here's the stereo version, here's the mono version. In the mono version here, we lose this width and balance. That's pretty much it. Other than that, the plugins work obviously in mono or stereo, but you'll lose this functionality as well. So I just wanted to sort of show you that quickly. Obviously, load the appropriate one up for the track that you're using. There's no point putting a stereo plugin on a mono track. So unless you're actually going to convert it to stereo. So I'll show you the stereo version because obviously there's only these two settings that are different. So the master control is meant to be our master control. So if we have our song here, we can turn the volume up and down as we so choose to control the volume if we want to. We can mute and solo that just as any plugin. So if we were doing a boost, we could mute it, solo it, double click on the fader to go back to normal. Okay, so we have a width control. So if we want to use this sort of like a pseudo end of chain mastering type thing, but not a true mastering, we can add some stereo width to make our mix wider. we can put it back to normal, or we can actually reduce it and make it mono. So if we want to listen to our song in mono or our track in mono, we could do that by setting it to 0. Double click, we go back to standard, right? So you might want to just add a little bit of extra width. If you go too far, you'll get a weird phasey effect, which we don't want. Now, if you also find that your song's a little bit out of balance, you could tweak the balance. Lean it to one side or the other, or go all the way across, which is really uncomfortable when you're wearing headphones. Okay, when you look at these meters here, you've actually got 4 lines. Now, you may be wondering why there's 4. The reason there's 4 is because you've got 2 peak, left and right, and left and right RMS. So generally our lower ones is going to be our RMS because that's an average. So that's our average volume here, and this is our peak. Okay, now this fader here is showing at the moment the results of what, sorry, the meter is showing the results of what the fader is doing because we've got it set to post. We can set it to pre, and what that means is this will have no effect. Now, it has an audible effect, but it does not have effect on our fader. So the reason I wanted to set it to pre now, just to show you, is that if I push gain, you can also see there's this overs here. So that's indicated that we have clipped and we have gone over. We can click on it to reset it. All right, but it will stay there to say that it's clipped. We've also got this little slow drop down there. But if we had it to post, then it's not going to clip because this fader is compensating for this gain control here. But you can, as I said before, quickly see on the out and in that we have a problem there anyway, where we've got it well and truly in the red. So we'll drop that down and then we can go back to normal and we're good to go. Now, do you need this master control on here? No. Has no effect whatsoever unless you use these. Alright, that's the only effect you're going to have, or the fader. Other than that, it is a meter and a meter alone. Okay, but it can be quite handy if you're doing all of your mixing within this plugin to be able to see that. Now, obviously, you can see this stuff on your own track in the DAW as well, but you can look at it on here in one, uniform window, basically. We could flick through various presets and whatever else, but it's not really... Well, let's flick through a few, hey? The scroll wheel, that's bugging me. I gotta admit it. Especially when there's so many presets. Just have to go down to the bottom here and click. Now they're very focused around individual tracks so far. SBC. It's like a special. Yeah, look. I've got to say that to me is really annoying. That is going to frustrate the heck out of me. The fact that this window is so long and you have to go and click down the bottom, which I can't even show you on the screen, or up the top, and not be able to scroll is really frustrating, and it doesn't widen. So there's no quick way to get. So if I wanted to get to patch 150, got to come down to the bottom and click the arrow and scroll slowly down. And yep, still waiting. Well, sorry, 179 it goes down to. So auto pump is another one. So there's got to be a quicker way to do it because that is really annoying. Anyway, I think some improvement needs to happen on that. Okay, so that is an overview of the plugin, and as I said, in the separate videos we'll go through each type of module. So there you go, that is the PSP InfiniStrip plugin. Let me know what you think of it in the comments below. If you have any questions, please again put them in the comments. Happy to help wherever I can. If you have interested in grabbing a demo of this, obviously go over to the PSP website. They've got plenty of plugins on there as well to check out other ones. I've got other videos on this channel about some of the PSP plugins. And yeah, hopefully you like it, and let me know what you think. Let me know what you think could be improved, or what features you love about this plugin compared to other ones. If you've liked this video, then please click the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell to be notified of all my future videos. I really appreciate the support that everybody gives me on this. It allows me to keep going with these videos. So every little contribution to the channel really counts. So I really do appreciate that. Hopefully this video has been helpful. I thank you for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.